everyone, to the Flying Pigskin, where the Bengals are 2-0 and leading the division.
Wow.
And the crowd goes, whoa.
Primetime winners.
We
Get that
won
monkey off the back.
I mean, can we get rid of that sucker now? I don't know.
Yeah.
So, in case you don't know, it's the Cincinnati Bengals podcast. I hope you collected that by now, where experts, these guys, and fans, me, take you pretty much everywhere we can, except the huddle, of course. I am your host, Tanya O'Rourke, and I am here with the legendary John Popovich.
Hi, how you doing, Tanya?
Say hello, John.
Hello, everybody.
And the not as legendary, but still in his own mind, Scott Kaiser.
I'll take that. Hello,
Will you?
Tanya.
Hello.
Yes. In my own mind.
It almost feels like so long ago. I had to think about the game. There was so much happening Sunday in the NFL. To go back to Thursday, I guess it just took me a second to kind of reintegrate. But it was a huge win, I feel like, for the Bengals and for Bengals fandom, in that I did not go to the game. I was at work. And so, but the stadium was pretty full, looked pretty darn full.
50,000 plus. Yeah.
Okay, that was pretty darn good. Yeah. And to see your team win in prime time, the only game on, I think that does a lot.
Oh, because you know how deflated you were each time when they went on Monday or Thursday night football and just laid an egg.
Oh,
And you
yeah.
go, oh, boy, I want to hear from everybody. Or it's like being proud of your city. You're proud of your team. You're proud of your Reds. You're proud of whatever. And you want them to look good.
Yeah, even to that point. Like, I'm texting some friends during the game, and I'm like, oh, the city looks great. All the bump shots, they were doing.
That shot with the Ferris wheel and the suspension bridge, that was fabulous.
Yeah, and this is mid-game, and I'm like, oh, boy, the city looks great. The sky was kind of purple-red, and the response was, yeah, and the Bengals don't look bad either. And it was like, yeah. I mean, it was such a huge thing, and I do think there is that monkey on the back that we all sit there as Bengals fans, or those of us who are Bengals fans, and we go, oh God, please
That's a double win, Tanya. Double win.
Double win.
They won in prime time, and you beat a divisional opponent.
Yeah.
I mean, so now you're sitting at the top of the division, and you wait for everybody else to play, and everybody else lost. So, I mean, that was a huge victory, even just, not just for the team, but I mean, an overall big picture when you're talking about the whole season. You look back on a win in primetime against the divisional opponent, and that could be huge when you're talking about playoffs.
Especially when, and we'll get to it later, but when the rest of the division is struggling mightily. I'm okay with it.
And take advantage of it when that other rest of the division is struggling.
All right, because here
exactly
we go into two tough games, too, by the way. I mean, we're going to hit, I think the next 2 weeks will be really hard for the Bengals to, especially, jumping the gun a little here. Joe Mixon out. That hurts.
Yeah, it hurts, but I mean, we talked about it in the first episode. You hope and come out of here 1-1, definitely win against the Colts, and then maybe win against Baltimore. But you come out 2-0, so losing Mixon hurts. Yes, obviously you never want to lose a guy who's just starting to hit his stride. It feels like, but when you're 2-0. You got a little leeway. So this tough stretch doesn't look as tough. It's not, oh, well, now they've got to hopefully try to hold things together. It's, okay, they're 2-0, and let's just keep it going, and hopefully the next man up, Bernard, can pick up the ball, and they'll be okay, and they don't have to hit the panic button because now they're going into these two tough games and have to win.
Who's behind Bernard?
It would probably be Trey Carson. He's
I admit I never have no idea who that is.
He hasn't had a chance to play. This would be his second year. He's out of I think Texas A&M, one of the two, something like that. So he's been on probably the practice squad, doing things like that, playing special teams when he had the chance. He's a little bigger than Gio. Gio's about 5'9". Carson's probably about 5'11", whereas Mixon's 6'1". He's a big back, bigger back.
He is a bigger back.
So I think they have to think of some different things to do, because I know Marvin was talking about that he wanted to use Mixon, maybe get him 22 carries a game. I don't think you want that for Gio.
No.
He's not the kind of guy that's going to carry that, so you're going to have to lay off the ball a little bit, maybe use your tight ends a little bit more, do things in order to create some short yardage situations without having to run the ball all the time.
Can you also, and I none of us are doctors here, but can anyone answer for me how arthroscopic knee surgery is only going to put him out for 2 weeks?
Well,
2 to 4?
I think initially it could have been a lot worse. I mean, when they said
it can always be worse.
Yeah, but when they said knee injury, I thought, oh. crap, IR, all
so
that.
they're just going in and cleaning it up? What's up?
Yeah, arthroscopic means they're just going in there and they don't have to completely reconstruct anything or do any of that. It's just like a minor surgical procedure. So hopefully
but
he'll
those are
heal.
Your knees, and that's your pivot point.
They say loose body, so I don't know whether that means a chip
body?
off
like a bone is out there?
something like that.
That's where my medical expertise ends.
They say he might miss a couple of weeks. But you know that even if you come back, there's probably going to be some residual effects for a little bit. They probably would love to get him. He's going to take a couple weeks off and then use the other guys as much as possible to get to that bye week, which is in like early October or so.
Yeah, when is our bye?
It's right at the middle of the season. It's right after the 8th game. So you have 2 games he's going to miss here, and then, but I don't think they want him to miss the next 6. But you probably have to try to just use him a little bit here and there.
Well, ideally, I mean, if they can keep winning and doing, you hold them out as long as you possibly can. I mean, if they're saying minimum 2 weeks, if they could win one of the next 2 weeks, then maybe you hold them off for another one, and you try to delay him coming back because like Papa said, with the knee injury, it's not gonna be just all right, 2 weeks, boom, you're 100%. I mean, there's gonna be still some.
Because everyone's going to be gunning for that knee, too.
Right. And so, I mean, you hope that they can just keep it as long as possible from him. And then, like Papa said, when you get him back, you're still just easing him in. So you're looking at probably 4 weeks, and you just want to nurse him all the way to that bye. And
I just think he adds such a spark of energy and excitement. He's fun to watch. As a fan, watching this visual thing, right? I just enjoy watching him run that ball. And I think that he is so excited to be on that field that I think that there's something really joyful about him being on there that I don't know. I think there's this intrinsic quality he adds to that offense that's not just about carrying the rock.
I agree. There's an attitude there. And like you said, there's like a delight in playing the game, which I think rubs off on a lot of other guys there. I think the one thing is, and I heard some people saying, well, Gio, we've seen what he's done. We haven't seen him with this offensive line. So maybe the reworked offensive line is a good thing for Gio Bernard as well.
Open up some
and
holes.
He didn't have that opportunity the last couple of years to show exactly what he can do. And we know he's a responsible back. He holds on to the ball. He can do a lot of different things. He catches the ball out of the backfield. So we'll just have to see. And I imagine they're going to get Trey Carson in there and play a little bit. And maybe do some other things in order to have, maybe you'll see John Ross on some ends around and do some things too.
I think that'd be interesting.
That never works, but maybe it will.
When they tried that, like they did like a reverse in that game, I was like, no, God, it just never works.
I mean, there's some things they can do to get creative and, maybe hide the fact that you don't want Bernard carrying it 20 times a game. But if you get 10 to 15 out of him and mix things in with Carson, the offenses look good enough that it's come at a time where you never want to say, oh, well, at least he's out. But the offense has still functioned if you're saying you're pulling him out of there, and maybe that was a cause of him because he was, doing so well that maybe it's, it'll be a huge drop-off. But you got to hope that AJ caught 3 touchdown passes within the first few minutes of the game.
But in the first, 3 or 4 minutes of that game, he dropped a ball, and I thought, no.
And you tweeted it right away.
I did.
Yeah, I did it. Now, you were the first person I thought of, and my phone lit up as soon as it happened. I'm like, she's already on it.
I'm on it.
Yeah.
I was like, no, come on. Do not have the dropsies. That would be terrible.
He more than atoned for it. I mean,
did he not? That was pretty. I mean, what a great game for AJ. We're talking 5 receptions. Thank you for getting the thinking. 69 yards, 3 touchdowns. That's the first time he's had a 3 TD game. That's
and the
a great
distribution
game.
to the other guys was good.
Yeah.
I mean, Tyler Boyd caught that next touchdown then. But you also saw the 3 tight ends all used, and it almost like it wasn't. They're not saying Tyler Eifert's here, now we have to use him. I think actually probably C.J. Uzomah got more throws, got targeted more.
Uzomah looked good.
Yeah.
I was really impressed. A couple of catch and runs. I thought it was really good.
And a couple times, too, they split off a little bit. They found Tyler Kroft, I think, when Dalton had to do things. The one thing I wanted to mention, I didn't see the game last night where Atlanta beat Carolina, but they were saying that the Carolina run defense looks horrible.
Oh, good. Except that no Mixon.
There it is. It seems like it's ironic that it's happening at that sort of time, but and we always, I think, equate Carolina with an awfully good defense, especially led by Luke Kuechly.
Sure.
And what they've been doing. So they must have some spots there that they're working on too.
Which is weird because in the first game against Dallas, they pretty much shut down Ezekiel Elliott.
They did.
Yeah. So I'm not sure why they had a tough time with Atlanta, who has not as good a ground game, but that'll be interesting to keep an eye on to see if maybe there are
our next two opponents.
Or it could have been that Matt Ryan exploited some things, and that.
But I mean, that may benefit Gio though.
That's right.
If they're struggling on run, defense, then he gets out there and maybe he has himself a day. That's only good for the Bengals.
I'd be down with that. I mean,
Would you, Tanya?
I would. Could you imagine if the Bengals started this season 3-0 when some people said that they would go 4-12? Mm-hmm. Who called them 4-12?
Well, I'll tell you what. There are a number of publications that have said they certainly didn't think the Bengals were going to be a 500 team. That they picked them only 4, 5, 6 wins, something like that, and that this would spell another nail in the coffin of Marvin Lewis. But 2-0.
He's Teflon Marvin right now. He is Teflon Marvin.
It doesn't mean anything if the next 2 games go and it's 2-2. Then you're back to scratch. Then you have to start over again.
Yeah, you sure do.
You have those 2 wins in the column, and the rest of the division isn't doing very well.
And that's awesome. Before we talk about the rest of the division, though, and you brought up Marvin, just quickly. So towards the end of the first half. Here they are. It felt like they had they had them on the ropes. They had the Ravens so far down, and then they leave too much time on the clock, and then here come the Ravens, and they go into the locker room with a score, and you're like, why? Why can't they learn to just drive down that clock? Why can't they run it down? And I think it just goes to people getting frustrated with clock management issues that this coaching staff tends to seemingly have. Is that as vague as I can make it?
No, and I'm glad you said coaching staff, because it may be more on Bill Lazor, the offensive coordinator, more than on Marvin.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do wonder. So as that goes, so you've got, because everyone's like, oh, Marvin, it's Marvin. Well, he's not calling the game.
No, he always says he has the final word on everything, though. But I would imagine that if your game's going like it was last Thursday night, he's staying out of the way for the most part.
Yeah, you guys are doing fine. Mm-hmm. You're doing fine. And then it looked like at the halftime adjustments tended to favor the Ravens, and that it just freaked me out.
Well, there was a little bit of a sense of,
here we go.
Here they
it's
come.
Prime time, and the Bengals are on TV.
Yeah. And that was good. I mean, in a way, it made us all kind of uncomfortable, and yet the Bengals came back and then, and showed some resiliency. And I love the fact that somebody like Sean Williams, who, of course, had been kicked out of the game earlier, made a big interception there in the fourth quarter, and then made that big fumble, forced the fumble on Joe Flacco late in the game that pretty much sealed things up. To me, sometimes it just shows they weren't going to give it away. We saw them give it away too many times, and this time they didn't. Yeah,
a lot of resiliency on this team so early in the season. And I feel like that's the mark of a team that feels good about themselves and is not going to give up. There were a couple times last season where I think we all said they just stopped playing. They just gave up in those games.
Well, and if you think about it, now thinking back to next week, that's 2 games in a row where there might have been this sense of, here comes the other team, and the Bengals are going to drop this one, and they're going to give it away because you had the Colts driving there at the end, and it looked like they might get the touchdown, and then they get the fumble and return. And then same thing with this, where Ravens are coming back, and that is good to have at the beginning of the season because
like a 2 or 3 touchdown lead doesn't seem enough. That's the problem.
Right, but you've now dealt with it a couple of times as a team where it's like, all right, guys, we've got to buckle down here and we've got to close this out and finish, and it's not just, well, all right, we've got the lead and we're just going to kind of coast in and, things happen and you can't turn the switch back on. So it is good that they've kind of felt that. So now when they get in those positions later on in the seasons,
hopefully, cross fingers,
they'll hopefully produce the same way and won't give it away. And maybe that's a difference in this team that, hasn't been there in a few seasons past.
I'm not a numbers person. I don't know. I kind of like all esoteric and feel. Like, I watch our defense, and I think we're playing pretty well. But I don't know how we rank. Does anyone know how we rank on D?
I didn't look up the numbers.
All good, but and tell me I'm wrong.
Well, they've given up 24 points in 2 straight games.
I was just going to say, I was like, when you just look at the peripherals, it looks like
that's not bad if you're scoring.
It feels like they're playing aggressively, which I like.
Yeah, I got the feeling just listening to the guys in the locker room and the weekly locker room sessions, they appreciate Bill Lazor running the offense, and now he has a full year under it, and they appreciate Terrell Austin running the defense. I got a feeling there is a change in the attitude, the aggressiveness. They like it. He's using guys in different ways, and there's no. I don't know that there's not anything in the history. These guys came in fresh. They were looking at players fresh, no problems with.
They didn't come up through the Bengals system.
Right, and a lot of people had thought Terrell Austin was going to be a head coach by now. He was in the Detroit system, and he was a defensive coordinator there. And he's interviewed, and he's been well thought of. So I think they have a guy that maybe he has a great season as a defensive coordinator, then he gets the job that he's wanted.
So I do want to bring this up because I tweeted it out yesterday. It's like, I think, my only tweet yesterday, which was, I'm watching the Pittsburgh game, and something really odd occurred. I felt odd, at least in the last 10 years. And that was very early in the first quarter, the fans were booing their team.
Oh, yeah, in Heinz Field.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah. By the way, I don't buy Heinz ketchup. Does anyone know that? I don't.
For that reason?
Yeah.
So you deny yourself the only good ketchup because
there are other good ketchups. I don't have to have. I'll bring you some.
I'm a ketchup elitist. Oh. I go Heinz or nothing.
Yeah. No, I'm not doing it.
Never crosses my mind that it has anything to do with the Steelers. Not even for a second.
Though, that was something to see them go behind.
Oh, Bengals defense ranks 10th.
All right.
Brian Neese.
There you go.
Yeah, top third.
Thank you, producer Brian, for helping us with that information.
Well, and I lost my train of thought here.
We were talking Pittsburgh.
See the Steelers fall behind 21-0. Come back, go ahead by halftime, and just goes to show what kind of a program that Steel is. But the Chiefs just kept. I mean, the Steelers had no answers for what the Chiefs were doing on offense.
Their quarterback is fearless. What's he on pace to do, like 90 touchdowns or something like that?
In 2 games.
That's insane.
Yeah, you want to talk about a team that needs to hit the panic button on defense. That's the Steelers. Because through really 2 games, they've looked horrendous on defense. And you aren't going to win it didn't happen yesterday for them, but you're not going to win too many shootouts. It's just too hard to do week after week to ask your offense to put up 40-plus points a game to pull these games out. So if that's what they're in for the whole season, there's going to be a lot more booing in Pittsburgh.
It stunned me. I mean, I was delighted in it a bit, I will admit, but I was stunned to hear boos. I think we were like only 4 or 5 minutes into the game, and I just couldn't believe it. And it continued. I stopped watching consistently, like sitting there actually watching the game. I was kind of doing other stuff. At halftime, I sort of walked away from the game a bit, but throughout the first half, they kept booing that team, and I'm thinking, this is the Steelers.
Yeah. I was cleaning the garage.
This is New Dawn.
So I was.
Will you come to my house and clean mine?
I was listening to it on the radio, though.
Yeah.
And the announcers made the exact same point you did. They've been there so many times, and they never heard the booing. And even after the Steelers came back, and then they lost the lead again, they said, "Here come the Boo Birds again." I'm thinking,
I know.
And it's.
These are Steelers fans who pride themselves on having the greatest team, the toughest team. They all have steel jaws, and they're like, we're the best fans ever. We love our team. Our Steelers nation's enormous. And they were booing at Heinz Field, which I'm not buying the ketchup.
I mean, they have high expectations, and high expectations on D. I'm guessing that's what would be, if I was a Steelers fan, that would be what's frustrating.
I don't know. They were going
built the Steelers.
Yeah, exactly. So when
but they were going 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, and that's when they were getting booed.
And that's fine.
And Antonio Brown was losing it a little bit on Twitter.
If they're going 3 and out, and they're also holding the other team, and they're doing what they're known for, which is defense, I think that's kind of the past few years. We talked about it a little bit. That defensive foundation has kind of gone away, and it's all been put on the offense. And when they're a team that's been historically known for their defense, and that's how they've won all those years.
Sure.
That's frustrating as a fan base to watch a defense do that, and then also on top of that, your offense is struggling.
Well, but I think that they've also gotten used to Roethlisberger being a miracle worker, and I don't think he is as much anymore. I mean, he just maybe doesn't have the people around him to make that happen.
He's got the guys. He's getting up there in age.
Maybe
and
that's it.
He's taken a lot of hits in his career. So I mean, at some point, you're gonna,
Well, and I think a lot of it too is sometimes aimed at Tomlin. Because
I'll never understand.
I'd take him.
I would take Mike Tomlin in a heartbeat.
But if you've won Super Bowls and then you go a number of years and you haven't won a Super Bowl, it's not like here.
Yeah.
Not
like where we've never won one.
It's I think a different expectation, and sometimes you wonder, okay, who are they aiming that at? But I think sometimes it has to do with the with Mike Tomlin sitting there,
which always cracked me up because Cowher still only won 1 too.
I know.
They would still hire him tomorrow if they could. They put him on such a pedestal. I'll never understand that, but whatever.
By the way, you got me thinking about something. You interviewed a bunch of the '88 Bengals this week. They were in town for something special. What did they think of the team? Did they say?
I talked briefly to a couple of them, and they just loved the fact that they were here with a team that they thought had the same sort of the kind of feeling. They all
like locker room. It was a locker room feeling for them in '88, wasn't it?
Locker room feeling. When you think about that team with the leaders on that team, I mean, I talked to Reggie Williams and James Brooks, but you think about Boomer and Munoz and Collinsworth. I mean, you just go up and down that roster of guys that meant business, loved the sport, and were, they may not have been the best at their position, but they put together in those years.
They had chemistry, that team.
Yeah.
They really did.
They really did.
Such a shame they lost. All right, so we got to talk about Cleveland, too. I'm sorry, Papo.
That's okay.
Cleveland. Well, when you got Scott Kaiser tweeting out and talking about how even he wants to hug a Cleveland Browns fan.
I mean, I've never had anything against Browns fans. There's nothing because they're very self-aware. I've never met a Browns fan that was full of himself, but I mean that loss was as rough as they come when you're staring down the barrel of what is it now, 18 straight?
I don't know. I was looking at their head coach. They kept taking shots of Hugh Jackson. I don't know how that guy sleeps.
Somebody said
miserable.
Yeah, somebody said yesterday this is now 35 straight winless Sundays for Cleveland. Could that be over the last season and then what had occurred the season before?
Yeah, when you're talking about the weeks in
that
the football season.
Give me your drink. I'm dying over here.
Yes. Right on it.
I have no mouth.
Well, I watched
injuries.
I watched that whole game, and it was weird because the Browns were playing really well against a team in the Saints that before
they looked like they were going to win again.
Well, I mean, the week before the Saints, got trounced by Tampa Bay, which now all of a sudden they're 2-0 and look like they may be better than we thought.
Right.
But then the Saints came back and they played really solid D, but they could do nothing on offense against the Browns, and it felt like though that as well as the Browns were playing, they just couldn't make that next play to do something that would put them ahead, and they just couldn't. They couldn't do enough. They just kept hanging around. You just had this feeling that, well, the Saints are eventually going to bust out. That offense is just too good, and the Browns never made enough plays. But then when you're still in a position to win despite all of that, and your kicker misses all of those kicks,
oh my gosh,
to send you to the loss, I mean, there's nothing more frustrating in the world.
I think a lot of kickers are losing their jobs this week.
Yeah.
It was a rough week for kickers.
You have to think they're trying out a few kickers in Cleveland right now.
Well, they already signed one.
Oh, they did today.
Well, it turned out that their kicker had an injury that required an MRI.
Oh, my gosh.
That they knew about it and still kicked. But either way, they've already signed a new kicker for.
Well, but here's my thinking on Cleveland, and I might be off base here. Maybe I just try to keep the glass a little half full when it comes to the Bengals, but I still think that Cleveland's better. It's like they're almost there, and
they're
and I'm not sure the Bengals win too off Cleveland.
You hear baseball coaches and football coaches over the years. There's a difference between a team that all of a sudden got good and then a team that has to learn how to win. And like Scott was saying, their inability to put it away seemed to be they're on the verge, but they couldn't get over the hump. Maybe that's what the Bengals have finally done, and the Browns are still trying to figure it out.
For years, that was the way people talked about the Bengals. They don't know how to win. They're not winners. So you're right. Maybe there is that mentality. We got to learn how to be a winner.
I mean, they're 2 field goals away from being 2-0.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that's how
right.
crazy it is. I mean, they've played well enough in both games to win both of them. So, yeah, I mean, I picked them to win 7 or 8 games this year, and I don't know that it'll happen. But they're good enough to do. But, yeah, they've got to learn how. And once they get that first one underneath their belt, then I think they'll
it'll break it down.
I was going to say, but you got to imagine that they get real tight there, and especially the last 2 when it comes down to that last play of the game where they just haven't done it yet, so they can't quite get there.
You're the Cleveland fan.
Well, what
do you think?
Yeah, I just believe that they are close, but whether they have all the right pieces, whether Tyrod Taylor is the guy, but he's won elsewhere, so I think he is the right guy at the right time right now. I was kind of wondering about their decision to part company with Josh Gordon right now, who everybody thought was going to be at least, and now you wonder, okay, what happened? Is he a disruption in the locker room? There's something there that has nothing to do with what's happening on the football field.
I mean, after 6 years, they finally pulled the plug in week 2. The timing is weird.
It is
something
odd.
happened, or
something must have happened this weekend that they just said we're done.
Yeah.
You didn't want me to talk about the fact that Troy Aikman was in town, so I won't. Except to say that
because I don't care
why didn't
about
I think
Troy
to go
Aikman.
find him? I don't know. All right, but we do need to talk about looking ahead. The Bengals and the Panthers. I get worried about this because I don't know enough about the Carolina Panthers, except that it feels like the Panthers should win, and I don't know why. So tell me why.
Well, one thing is it's in Carolina, and they play well there. Only a couple of years ago, what was it, about 3 years ago, Carolina was a Super Bowl team, or
Super Bowl runner-up.
Runner-up.
Yeah.
They were good. They're great defense at that time, and I don't think they're nearly the team they were, but they're still a contender in a division there with Atlanta. But Atlanta scored something like 20 unanswered points on them last night in order to win that game. I didn't have a chance to see it. They beat Dallas in their opening game, 14-7, and you saw last night what Dallas did to the New York Giants. Just blew them out.
The Giants are horrendous. I can tell you, the Giants are horrendous. Between them and the Bills and probably Arizona, those might be the 3 worst teams in football. When I watched that first game with Dallas and Carolina, yeah, Carolina's definitely eroded on both sides of the ball since their Super Bowl, but they've still got enough. They're not a team that you can take lightly, and as long as you've got Cam Newton, there's always something. I mean,
I think that Cam Newton factor is what's in my brain. You know, you got Luke Kuechly and Cam Newton, and those 2 things combine in my brain as a Bengals fan, again, who always is like, well, we may not win. To go,
I think they've just pulled back to the rest of the pack where they're not as dangerous of a team.
Stellar team.
I was gonna say you don't fear them as much. In fact, I'd argue that right now they're right at the same place as the Bengals, where even though the Bengals, record-wise, that you don't think about them as fearsome, with the moves that Carolina's made over the past few years and the things that they've lost, they've pulled back to where I think that these 2 teams are very evenly matched. Like, I don't think that either team is going to pull away or do anything crazy.
All right, so we have the Panthers next week, and then the week after, Atlanta. And I think at the beginning of the season, we were saying if they were 2-2 at the end of this deal, the first 4 games, the Bengals would be doing just fine.
Yeah, that's my feeling too. Still is.
You maintain that?
I do think though that if they go on the road here, this is maybe the Sunday to win. They've had the longer break. Carolina had the.
Carolina's not as good as Atlanta.
Are they? Is that in Atlanta?
It is in Atlanta. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I think Atlanta's the easier game to win, but I think this is the more important game again because I think they're closer to that playoff team than Atlanta. I don't trust Atlanta for anything. I mean, besides Matt Ryan, I know they were in the Super Bowl 2 years ago, but they're just not the same.
Why are you hating on Atlanta?
Because I've never really trusted that team. Like, no matter what, no matter how good they are on paper, they just always seem like, well, it's Matt Ryan and a bunch of guys. So,
isn't every team a little like that?
Yeah, they are, but it just, for whatever reason, that team, I mean, if you could win this game, I mean, you just staring 4-0, because I really do. I think Atlanta's the easier team to beat, so.
I think that's interesting. I don't know.
Now all of a sudden, to me, 2-2 would be slight disappointment.
That's what I was just about to say. I think 3-1 is where the Bengals need to be after the Atlanta game. Is that they need to win one of those on the road, tougher games. Everyone expected them to beat Indianapolis, and then to come home and play at night on a Thursday. Okay, that was a toss-up, but they won it, and so good for them.
Right.
So if they can take one of these road games, I think that's huge. And it's, by the way, hard to start a season. 3 games on the road, only 1 home.
I mean, that'd be the first quarter of the season. So when the coaches always like to say you break the season down into a quarter, and that would be winning the first quarter. At 3-1, you'd be feeling great.
Yeah, at 2-2 would be a little disappointing for me as a fan at this point, because I think, okay, we're better than people thought.
Yeah,
we should be. I hate that Mixon's out, but otherwise, I think the team's fairly healthy, right?
They are.
Yeah,
they expect Preston Brown to come back, and they were missing him at linebacker last time.
Were.
I think there's a question of Billy Price. Billy Price and also Michael Johnson. They're not season-ending injuries, but they might be 2-3 weeks. So might be out without 2 to 3 starters. But was it Trey Hopkins came in, did a pretty good job at center, and Sam Hubbard came in and took Michael Johnson's place. That's a spot where they're pretty deep. And it's
nice to see Sam Hubbard in there.
It is.
It's kind of nice, Great story. We follow him quite a bit on WCBO.com.
Speaking of Troy Aikman, I've noticed how many women in the newsroom are interested in Sam Hubbard.
I keep hearing that name amongst the women, too.
It's funny. I'm not hearing that.
Really?
Oh.
Yeah, I need to be hanging out with the other girls more.
Every time Sam Hubbard's name gets mentioned, I hear somebody
Sam
swoon.
Hubbard.
Or we show him on the air.
That'd be like me hanging out with my son.
Good-looking guy with blue eyes and stuff like, oh, come on.
See, Troy Aikman, that's more my age group. I'm good with that. I'm good. And plus, I just always had a thing for him. Yeah. See, you wanted me to talk about it.
I do think this
I know you don't.
is that these next 2 weeks give you a better measuring stick of where this team is. Indianapolis on the road is one thing. Going and playing Atlanta and Carolina on the road is a different thing.
Right, exactly.
And so I think that everybody's going to be able to see, okay, how did they play? How did they go and lay an egg at Carolina after giving us that 2-0 start? Or did they go and win or at least play and be real competitive? I think everybody's going to get a better sense of this team. Can they go with, now they've done what, 33 points 2 weeks in a row?
Something like that.
All right. Could they put those kind of numbers up again? Those seem to be easy numbers in a way. They don't seem like, oh boy, they scored 33 points. No, they did it. They did it well.
They started out that first half of the first half. They looked fantastic on offense. They just looked great.
They looked a little unstoppable. I was actually surprised that the Ravens they looked out of sorts.
I mean, when it was like boom, 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 all these touchdowns.
It happened fast.
It was. I was thinking, this is amazing, and then then we got towards the end of the half, and they were catching up. We're like, no, come on, don't pull a Bengals.
And they didn't let Andy Dalton get hit once.
Oh, he didn't take a sack?
No, it didn't. And I think there was only the one. Somebody got a roughing the passer penalty, which was really rinky-dink on the Ravens one time.
Oh,
and
this roughing the passer things. It's getting crazy.
Oh, and how about the one for the Packers game yesterday?
Yeah, which is the Aaron Rodgers rule. I mean, the reason that rule exists is because of Aaron Rodgers, and then it came back to bite him in the butt.
And you throw the ball, you hit him, and it's like, that's roughing the passer, and
they said he put his weight on him.
Yeah, but it wasn't like
the
Carlos Dunlap of the week before, where he kind of picked him up and fell on him. It was just, he knocked him down.
I even thought.
Well, that's funny because watching that Saints-Browns game, Tyrod ran up the middle and kind of cut back to his left. And when he turned around, there was a Saints defender that blasted him. And I thought, well, that's going to be a penalty. And because he was a runner, Tyrod got right back up and there was no penalty. And I thought, I just can't watch any of these games anymore and know what's going to be a penalty and what's not.
During the Bengals game the other night, I'm screaming at Papa, who's, we're all at work. I'm like, why isn't that a penalty? Why isn't that a penalty? And he's like, I don't know. I'm not watching. And I'm like, I can't keep up with this roughing the passer thing. I think is it worse this year for sure?
Yeah, I hope it'll sort itself out a little. Now, Cam Newton took off running yesterday, and he took a nasty hit from somebody.
But you're a runner now.
Yeah.
So you can get
But it was very reminiscent of the hit that Sean Williams put on, and it was helmet to helmet, but it looked like it was much more vicious. Guy got kicked out, and Cam Newton didn't leave. I mean, he didn't suffer a concussion or anything like that. But to me, that was obvious. Some of these other ones just aren't obvious. Maybe
I
we're
know.
just not used to what the rule is now.
If you're a ref, I just got to think your head spins. You're watching these. There's a penalty on every play, so I don't. All right, so I guess I should ask the question. What do you think this week? Do the Bengals take it at the Panthers, or they fall short?
I think they're going to beat them.
Yeah,
All right.
But I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a field goal or less, something like that. It's going to be. I think they're going to go down there. I think it's a team that feels good about themselves. They're going to take a trip. They liked. I think they really liked the idea of winning on Thursday night.
I think that feels good.
And being somebody that the rest of the NFL is talking about. And there's enough guys there that they like it, but they're not going to get overwhelmed by it.
Little chip on their shoulder, maybe.
Yeah, I think so.
Come on, you guys think we're going to be 4-12?
Well, I think they're in the same mindset that we are. You got those 2 games out of the way, and people are probably maybe poo-pooing it a little bit. But if you go down there and you beat Carolina, now all of a sudden people can't just say, oh, well, they haven't. All of a sudden, it's like, oh, these guys might be for real. And in their minds, they don't necessarily need to prove that to anyone to know that they're real. But, I mean, just for everybody else, like, this is their first kind of real test. If you're looking at those other two, it's like, yep, all right, check the box off. We got the monkey off our back for prime time. All right, now let's go down here.
Next challenge.
Right, next
Going
challenge
on the
is to
road
go
to
on the
Carolina
road and beat a team that, people think are good enough to make the playoffs. Let's go check that box off.
All right.
And I think they do it because they've played well through these first 2 games, and they've got to be feeling good about how everything's gone. There's nothing that you can point to and say, that game, maybe they can play a little bit better on D, but if they're a top 10 D, they can't really argue much about that. So I think they're playing as good as they can. And another challenge will be, you know what? People are probably doubting us because we're without Joe. Let's go down there and win this without Joe.
Yep.
Because if you can doing that, I mean, how great
show
would
some
that
depth,
be?
show some adversity.
Yeah.
A grace under fire. I'd like to say, then I'm going to go long. I think the Bengals win a squeaker. I think it'll be tight.
Because if I had to guess,
it's not going to be a blowout.
On Monday morning, what the spread would be, I'm guessing Carolina's only getting the 3 points at home. That's it. They're not going to be more than a 3-point favorite going to the game. So you're talking about a close game is what will be expected. So they can go down there and win by a field goal.
Yeah.
Carolina hasn't been explosive on offense.
All right, go Bengals then. I think that, look at us. I just got to make note of this. 3 weeks ago when we sat here, we were all like, well...
I said 6 and 10. They're already two-thirds of the
9 and 7,
They're already two-thirds of the way there.
I said 9 to 7 or 10 and 6, one of those two. Maybe 9 and 7. But seriously, and again, in 3 or 4 weeks, we might be going, well, they're just not that good.
Well, things can happen in a hurry, but they've looked a lot better than I thought they would.
It's just changed. Like, my attitude's a little different. Yours?
The one thing is my attitude has changed, but I always thought they had the talent. It's just a matter of whether they got it done. One thing I'm not seeing, and maybe you guys could correct me on this, I'm not seeing any super team in the NFL.
There's not an outstanding.
What about 5 teams that are 2-0, like the Bengals, something like that. But there doesn't seem like be anybody that you just go, wow, who's going to beat them? The Patriots got whipped yesterday.
Yeah. And like my husband's Vikings were supposed to be like that's a Super Bowl team.
You got it.
I mean, they were playing Green Bay at Lambeau, but I was like,
I think maybe the Rams are the best.
That was
Isn't that weird to say it's the Rams?
But I don't trust them overall. So,
no.
I mean,
they looked good last year.
And the 2 best teams right now, you'd have to say after 2 weeks, Jacksonville and the Rams. And then maybe the Chiefs, but the Chiefs gave up a lot of points. So, I mean, it's just a flashy thing.
The Chiefs are also that team that the first 8 games they're good, and then they just go...
Tend to do it. But I tell you what, I respect their coach a great deal. I love Andy Reid. I liked him in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And I think he game plans as well as anybody because he always seems to solve some other teams that they say you can't do anything against them. I'm not sure he adjusts as well, but yesterday they did. And I just think if you're a player, you're looking around and you're going, we're as good as anybody else in the NFL.
Yeah.
I think that spurs you on.
It's certainly in the AFC.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's...
AFC is wide open. Like all of the
we're leading the AFC.
All of the best teams are in the NFC. Like when you take off filter out the Patriots. I mean,
well, the Patriots got killed yesterday.
Yeah, but they'll still be there 14-2 at the end somehow.
Just like the Steelers. You watch; they'll win the next 14 games. See, we're back to being negative.
Yeah. It only takes a minute to flip the switch.
Well, we'll keep flipping the switch, and we'll see you back here next week because this does wrap up our episode of The Flying Pigskin. Glad you guys would joined us. We hope that you'll subscribe. You can do that on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Google Play. We'll see if we're right about this win. Let's hope so. Hoo day.
Okay. Have a good one.
Hoo day.